Hi, my name is Bruce Karmazin. I'm the Executive Director of the Lumpkkin Family Foundation. Since 1991, the family has gathered for the annual Lumpkkin Family Meeting. It's a great opportunity for the kids to get to know each other, for the families to discuss business, but also to discuss philanthropy and the importance of giving back. Today, you're going to get to know a little bit about the fourth generation, Dick Lumpkkin, Richard A. Lumpkkin, his sisters Peggy Keon and Mary Lee Sparks, joined by Mary Lee's husband, Jack. They're going to talk to you today a little bit about who they are, the lessons they've learned, and the advice they have to offer. So these are their stories. This is who they are. I hope you enjoy it.
In front of the Library of Congress, there is an inscription that says, "The past is prologue." And where I went to school, Phillips Academy, the motto was Origine Fini Pendet, which translated, as I recall, means that the end depends upon the beginning. Our parents, my father was very much involved in the community. They had strong feelings about giving back. I think of World War II in particular, where my father went off to serve on the War Production Board, and my mother worked for the Red Cross. She worked at the canning factory, canning fried chicken and...
They canned in the heat of an Illinois summer, and canning is a very hot experience to begin with. But I remember Mother coming home covered with perspiration, her clothes all wet.
Yeah.
But I felt that she loved that. And a lot of it was about the war effort, a lot of it was about community. All of them working together just was so fulfilling for her and so exciting.
Partially it was the context of World War II as well,
Yes.
I think, in which there was a lot of sacrifice, that those values were really instilled in the three of us.
As we became teenagers, Mother became very active in establishing a teen center. What do we call it?
The clothesline.
The clothesline. Then we got to work behind the counter. We got to make milkshakes, all on a volunteer basis. That was a very hands-on entrepreneurial activity, and it was very successful.
Our family has a rich history. My great-grandfather, Dr. I.A. Lumpkkin, was intrigued with the invention of the telephone and had an opportunity to found what became the Mattoon Telephone Company and ultimately grew into Consolidated Communications.
As a child, I remember my grandmother telling me that she had been thinking about the telephone, this relatively new invention, and that it occurred to her since her husband, our grandfather, and his father had a dental office, and they had a woman employee who served as a receptionist or an assistant, I don't know, that it occurred to her that that might be a very appropriate place to put a switchboard, and that she talked to them about it, and they decided to do it. And I just always thought that it was her brilliant idea that led to all of this.
I can't confirm whether it was our grandmother's idea or not, but certainly our great-grandfather, Dr. I.A., was very susceptible to anything that involved new technology. And you've got to remember this was in the early 1890s. And it was he who organized a company to take over where a previous company, the Bell System, which had started an exchange in Mattoon in 1881, which when you think of it, the telephone was only invented in 1876. But the company failed and they abandoned it. They had very few customers. They had some poles and wires spread around town. The wires were coming down in people's backyards, and it was becoming a public nuisance. And great-grandfather stepped forward. He formed a partnership with the president of the bank and a couple of other individuals in the community. They raised $10,000, and he was then commissioned to go to Chicago and buy a switchboard president of the bank took him aside and said, "Now, Dr. Lumpkin, when you go to Chicago, you're going to encounter a lot of high-pressure salesmen, and they're going to try to sell you a larger switchboard than we need. And in my opinion, a 25-line switchboard will serve the community for the foreseeable future." And great-grandfather came back with a 250-line switchboard, and when they put it in service, he had already signed up 175 customers, and they took the number 175 as their home telephone number. Our father was spending a lot of time in New York City. He had met our mother when she was a student at Wellesley, and they fell in love. And our grandmother from Mattoon got on a train and went out to New York to attend an announcement party. Our grandfather was to follow, and on his way to the railroad station in a foggy night, he drove his car off into an embankment to the subway where the Illinois Central Railroad passes through the town, and was killed. The engagement party was called off, and my father returned to Mattoon to find that his father had died without a will, and it fell to my father to try to maintain the business, and it was a very difficult time. He went out to New York to see my mother and to really tell her that he had come to the conclusion that he couldn't marry her and he couldn't support her financially. And the net result of that was that they eloped. My mother had promised her mother that she would never run off and get married. And subsequently, they were married in Portland, Oregon. And I can remember as a little boy sitting in her lap and playing with her wedding ring, and there were two small stones in it. One was a ruby and one was a sapphire. She'd say, "And sometime I'll tell you what that means." Well, she never told any of us until from different hints that we had picked up over the years, we finally did a little investigation and discovered the record of their marriage in New York. And on their 50th anniversary, we confronted them. Mary Lee and Peg came out.
Remember Ruth standing outside the door, and we all came in, and they were...
We brought them to my house for dinner, and we confronted them with the evidence. In all modesty, it would be hard to overestimate the impact that the foundation has had on East Central Illinois. There is an appeal to me of giving in East Central Illinois because I think we have an opportunity to have a great deal of effectiveness. We are the only significant charitable organization that is headquartered and has a focus in East Central Illinois.
I like to feel if I am going to put money someplace, I'd rather put it where other people aren't putting it, and basically East Central Illinois feels that.
So much of the family itself is no longer really centralized in the original area. But we still cling to that and still feel the obligation to do something about it.
Although it is harder for us who haven't lived in East Central Illinois in a long time to be as attached to it as perhaps Dick, who has remained there. Still, we certainly recognize the legacy and the fact that that is where the original funds for the foundation were generated. It is appropriate that it goes back to that community.
We focused largely on hospitals that served our geographic area and libraries that served our geographic area.
The direction of the foundation staff itself, bringing the caregivers of East Central Illinois together, and setting up networks so they're in communication with each other. It is one way that you can show the whole country what you can do on a local level by interconnecting the various charities.
Several years ago, we changed the name of the foundation from the Lumpkkin Foundation to the Lumpkkin Family Foundation, and I think that was a good thing because it recognizes the role and the importance of the family in this activity.
Dick really was charged with figuring out where to go with the foundation, and he immediately involved Mary Lee and me, and we started making plans to bring the family together in a way that had not been done before.
I hope that this bringing the kids together and letting the cousins get to know each other as they're learning will produce a group that can work together and carry on the good things that have been developed so far.
We've gone through a process of learning about philanthropy as a family, of examining what we wanted our philanthropy to look like, learning as a family about our primary interests, and developing ways to make this happen.
Each individual family member had their own particular interests, and we needed to find a way to structure the foundation so that those interests could be served on the one hand, and on the other hand, we wanted to continue the contributions we made back to Central Illinois.
The Indians have meant a lot to me because I have gotten to know the people and know some of their problems with losing their identity, with losing their heritage. Acción New Mexico and Arizona and Colorado is more or less local, but I've also been introduced to Acción International. And you see what they do, and they go out and they get somebody who is trying to get their head above water. They get somebody into a business to be able to give to someone, and you can actually watch where the money goes. To me, has become the most important thing about philanthropy.
Probably the most meaningful things to me would be I've put some kids through high school, private school, because I think it's probably going to give them a different life, and I think they're going to be bigger contributors to the world because of that. Actually, I'm in the process of establishing an endowed fund now. It was an initiative, an international initiative at the Wellesley Centers for Women. And what they've been able to do with a relatively small amount of money is astounding to me and exciting to me. And I want us to feel that we are part of a global community and to be able to work in that area if we need to.
We would all agree, if we think about our parents and our grandparents, that they had very strong values. They participated in their communities. They helped build their communities. One of the challenges of bringing the rest of the family into the foundation was really to pass on that value, to teach them about giving back. I go back for a minute to the Great Seal of Andover, which has one other thing in it, and it's the Latin expression non sibi, which means simply not for yourself.
My feeling is that if our mother, our father, or our grandmother, or perhaps our grandfather and great-grandfather could see today what the Lumpkkin Family Foundation is doing, they would be not just pleased, but absolutely thrilled and amazed. And I think we have a great deal to be proud of, and I'm sure they would be. And a lot of thanks to Dick.
But it has definitely been a growing experience for all of us at each generation, and I think will continue to be as we go forward. And you asked me what are my hopes for the future. Certainly that would be one of the ways I would define it, that it would continue to be a growing experience for the family members.